Welcome to the Ray Harryhausen podcast, the show dedicated to the life, career and films of a special effects titan. Join us as we host in-depth discussions about the work, influences and legacies of this uniquely talented filmmaker. Brought to you by the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation, we will be delving into Ray's archive to bring a unique insight into his work, including exclusive audio from the man himself. We will be joined by special guests for retrospectives, exclusive announcements and competitions, so this podcast is a must-listen for all fans of the world of Ray Harryhausen, animation and classic filmmaking.
Hello and welcome to the Ray Harryhausen podcast. My name is Connor Heaney. I'm the collections manager with the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation, and today we have a very special interview for you. Our trustee John Walsh has spoken with Neil McConnon and Patrick Gyger at the Barbican Centre in London about a very special science fiction exhibition that they have planned for 2017. I'm joined once more by John today. How are you, John?
Hi Connor, I'm good today, thanks. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well, and I'm very excited about this exhibition that we have planned with the Barbican for next year. The interview with Neil and Patrick will more or less speak for itself, but we'll just provide a bit of context here. It's the sort of exhibition that might play with people's expectations and preconceptions about the sci-fi genre and how Ray Harryhausen's works fit into it.
Yes, that's right. I mean, when I spoke to them both just a couple of weeks ago about the event, it's called Into the Unknown, a journey through science fiction. So for a lot of people, when we think of science fiction, we might think of Star Wars, but of course, you know, George Lucas didn't invent science fiction. It's been in literature and in art for centuries. But interestingly, we did have a discussion about who invented the phrase sci-fi, because it's often attributed to Ray's good friend, Forrest J. Ackerman, the founder of famous Monsters of Movieland magazine. But Ray's going to be a part of, if you like, the evolution timeline of science fiction in popular culture. And the guys were saying to me that they don't think this could have happened maybe, 30 or 10, 20 or 30 years ago. The time is kind of right. It's kind of ripe for it. So Ray is a big part of what is a larger exhibition all about science fiction, because not all of Ray's films feature as science fiction, do they, Connor? Even though they've got fabulous monsters, there's a kind of a separation of genre there.
No, absolutely, and I think a few people, when they think of Ray Harryhausen, would think primarily of his fantasy films and his films about mythology or about dinosaurs, and it really is a kind of subtext throughout Ray's work where he was more involved with the science fiction genre than you might expect. There's the obvious films such as First Men in the Moon and Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, but Ray was very heavily influenced by early science fiction writers such as Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. And so, as you'll hear, the guys from the Barbican are interested in aspects of Ray's work that you might not necessarily believe to be science fiction at first glance.
Yes, that's right. So here we go. Here's my exclusive interview with the guys, and we'll catch up again in a few moments.
People of Earth, attention. People of Earth, attention.
I'm at the Barbican today with Neil McConnon and Patrick Gyger. Neil designed Neil actually worked on designing 007, 50 Years of Bond. Neil, if I can start by asking you a bit about that, because that was an incredibly successful exhibition.
It was indeed. It was probably the most successful show we've done in our 35-year history here. It was a big heavily branded British brand, cinema brand franchise that we wanted to really celebrate over the Olympic period in London. So it was a show that we staged here in 2012. As I say, we wanted to rally around a big British brand, and what better film brand than Eon, than Bond. So we collaborated with the Eon production studios. They made their entire archive available to us, this wonderful facility that they have just outside of London. Two guest curators, Oscar-winning costume designer called Lindy Hemming, and a design historian called Bronwyn Cosgrave. And we really lifted the lid off 50 years of filmmaking. So all of the artistry, the craftsmanship, the people behind the scenes, the often overlooked people who are really responsible for creating these amazing films that really have changed in many ways the way that movies are made over the last 50 years. So we wanted to, as I say, to reveal the process and really to highlight and showcase some of the often overlooked film production people.
And so we're here today to talk about a very special film project as well, because next year's 2017 science fiction exhibition is going to have a very strong sort of film element to it. So, Patrick Gyger, can you tell me what's the title of the exhibition and why it's right now for for science fiction to make a big comeback here at the Barbican?
So the exhibition is called Into the Unknown. The subtitle is A Journey Through Science Fiction. And the idea is really to explore the realms that science fiction has explored as a genre, from exploring the surface of the earth to going under the sea, then under the earth, and then towards the sky, to space, and then going back to mankind, future cities, transformation of our own bodies, going inside our bodies, inside our minds, creating cyberspaces. So it's like this journey through science fiction and the realms of science fiction. Why now? Because I think we ask ourselves, it's not new, but we ask ourselves where we're at in the present and what the future holds more than ever, maybe because it seems there are not so many alternatives future at the moment. So, and also because I think we live in the utopias and dystopias of the previous generation. So we have global surveillance, but also free education and free healthcare. So we are at a very interesting moment, beginning of 21st century still. We've passed the mythical year 2000. Nothing dramatic happened. So, it's a good time to question ourselves, what does the future hold?
And it's a great setting to have it in, of course, because the Barbican Centre is slightly reminiscent of Logan's Run, isn't it? In the movie Logan's Run, with all of its sort of brutalism and its concrete sort of structures. So you're working with lots of different organisations, including the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation. So you spoke to me earlier about your first meeting with Ray. So when did that happen and what transpired?
I was in my previous position. I was running a science fiction Utopia and X-ray Journeys museum in Switzerland, which has one of the biggest archives in the field, mostly paper-based archive documentation on science fiction. That's the archive of Pierre Versant, one of the main scholars of science fiction. And through that, I did a number of exhibitions, and I was really interested in doing an exhibition with Ray because I had been a big fan since I was a child. And I met him in Neuchâtel at the film festival where we got him invited probably in 2001 or 2002. I was doing a Q&A with him and, all kinds of public programs. And then he invited me very kindly to his house, in London. So I went to his house and he showed me all of the art that he had, and also the Willis O'Brien art and the other things that he had kept from the years where he was working in Hollywood, and told me about the trust and the foundation that he had set up in Scotland, and that could maybe tap into that at some point to do a project. I saw him again a year or two after that because I got him invited in Nantes to the science fiction festival, big festival called Utopial, which I directed at the time. So again, big Q&A and meeting with fans and all that. The exhibition didn't happen, unfortunately, with his work at that time. And then I left the museum. But once I was brought to this new science fiction project here at Barbican, then I thought it's about time that we go back to Ray Harryhausen's work and show how he celebrated Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and all those pioneers of science fiction. He himself being a pioneer. So we're going to try and hope to show some of things that nobody has seen before.
So editorially, where do you think Ray kind of slots in? Because you've got lots of different contributors. There's lots of mixed media having with props and films and so on. And of course, literature. So where do you see sort of Ray's legacy, I suppose, is what I'm asking?
Well, I think, he's going to be in the chapters at the beginning of the show where we're still exploring the surface of the planet with all of the dinosaur films, Valley of Guanji and Mysterious Island, all the references to Jules Verne. So he's going to be there along with Jules Verne himself, where we have original manuscripts and items from Jules Verne. We have we have amazing kind of old kind of 19th century books and all those really beautifully illustrated hardcovers. And it's Ray Harryhausen is really at the junction between Jules Verne, Méliès, and Kubrick in a way, and Douglas Trumbull. So he's going to be there between Extraordinary Voyages and Space Odysseys, and we're going to also try and show things from The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and Earth versus Flying Saucers and War of the Worlds and all those kind of space-related films that Ray has worked on. Some of them not being released, but they still have really great archives, and First Man on the Moon, of course. So I think Ray was really interested in that period, early 20th century, kind of beginning of science fiction, lost worlds, going to space, strange creatures, prehistoric monsters. So that we're going to try and celebrate that.
It's interesting you mentioned War of the Worlds, because Ray's concepts for War of the Worlds involve the Martians having actual tripods. So unlike George Powell's version, which was very much a Derek Meddings approach with strings holding up the Martian ships, it's a shame Ray's one didn't come to the screen, but we have some fabulous artwork.
We do, and we hope to show it.
Now, the surprising thing about Ray and his work is that Hollywood is quite disposable, and I suppose unique, like the James Bond archive. They've kept lots of the items from the films, and Ray kept everything. He was a hoarder by modern standards. Whereas, have you found it difficult when you've been looking for other productions that most things get thrown out, don't they? Sets, special effects, props, spaceships often get thrown away at the end of a shoot. How difficult has that been for you finding what you wanted?
It's been very difficult because it was never in the tradition of Hollywood to keep any of those items, mostly the special effects ones. The costumes people used to keep because they were reused in many things. Everything that was that had a semblance of reality or could be used, or cars, tables even, those things would be kept. But everything which was very specifically done for a film, mostly fantasy or science fiction film, was either kept by the people that made them or it was thrown away. And we were with Neil recently in Hollywood, and we were at Paramount and Warner Brothers, and those archives that are very, very recent. The Warner Brother one, which is really nice, has been up only for maybe 15 years, 20 years. And the Paramount one has only been going on for 10 years, not even. So the creators that we know, and there are many, there are people like Patrick Tatopoulos that has kept a few things because he was allowed to leave the studios and the production with them. It's very rare actually that it does happen. And I know many creators that don't have anything. We have a few things from the H.R. Gyger museum that he has kept or recreated. We have things from the recent films like Interstellar or Inception. But that period has ended also because now it's all digital. So it's all virtual effects and 3D computer generated. So in 10, 20 years, it's going to be very difficult to find anybody like Ray Harryhausen because all the work would have been done on computer and it's not going to be easily accessible. There will be no bottles, no original art. So it's a very specific thing to bring to the public, I think. And it's also shows the history of the media a little bit.
Yeah, but when you think about the years of the 50s, 60s and 70s, other people working alongside Ray Harryhausen may have been Derek Meddings on a variety of Bond films and lots of other special effects productions. And Derek Meddings' family don't own most of those models because, of course, he was hired in as a gun for hire, so he doesn't own those properties. So they may have been destroyed or lost or sold. So I suppose Ray is quite unique in that sense, in that he was the producer as well as the special effects person.
The difference between Ray and some of the other special effects people is that Ray was the initiator himself of the content. He came to the producer. He was sometimes the producer himself, and he came to the producer as the person who carried the project, he said, let's do this film. I have this idea. Here are the concepts for this film. And he would try to sell that project to producers and studios. And then they would hire a director. So because of that, he had a power on the film, which was quite different from another artist who would just be brought in to do a few drawings and key items, or even kind of not key items, and then would leave after a week or 2 weeks. It would be on the set and working on the film from the very early stages to the end. And I think that's quite rare today, even.
One of the challenges we have at the foundation is that the pieces, because they're mostly made of rubber with metal skeletons inside, they're deteriorating, and the earlier pieces obviously have deteriorated more than some others. You've had a chance to look at the archive in recent years. Both of you, in fact, went to the archive in recent times. What did you discover when you were there? Did anything surprise you, or did anything excite you in particular? Neil, if I can start with you on that one first.
I think the sheer volume of it, to see so much material in one place, was just astonishing. To see, the level of detail in the drawings and in the models and maquettes, to follow the trajectory of Harryhausen's thinking and creating these things. It's such a unique perspective and a real privilege to be able to witness that, and as I say, to follow the mindset and the production process. I think that for me was the revelation. Just simply astonishing.
And Patrick, did you find that being there, because I often feel like I'm a child in a toy shop, I want to see this one, I want to see that one, where's Pegasus, where's Bubo the Owl, there's different versions and so on. Did you find it was sort of an embarrassment of riches?
It was very tempting to spend more time and to go through everything. We were lucky enough, we're not only doing a show on science fiction, so directly a lot of the stuff was not relevant. So thank God, Otherwise, we would have brought in like all the little creatures from all the boxes, and I hope that's going to happen. There is enough material to do like a show only on Ray Harryhausen, and a big one. And I hope that's going to happen soon, because there's a lot of beautiful stuff. I was also impressed by the amount of material, but also the type of content, the fact that there were storyboards and the models and maquettes and what we call the key drawings, those big kind of A3 or A2 drawings that represent a specific scene almost for each movie. So there are things from all of the movies and a lot of different things from the different movies. So that was really surprising that there was so much stuff. But it was also good that there are several films we're not getting into, like Clash of the Titans or all the Sinbad or the Greek mythology. We're not going into, because it's just it's just outside of what we're going to show in the exhibition, because it's not science fiction. Whereas Valley of Gwangi is, in my perspective.
Now, other than the obvious assets like the key art, the concept art you talked about, and the monsters themselves, the foundation actually has a sort of film and tape archive, or a digital assets archive, and we recorded about 25 hours worth of oral histories with Ray that have never been heard before. So do you hope to use some of those oral histories perhaps in the exhibition? Are there any plans for that?
I think it's a bit early to tell. The exhibition is not about the process of film, of making the film. It will try to keep this kind of sense of wonder and the suspension of disbelief thing. We're promoting, or we're doing science fiction for its own sake. We're not showing how it's done, So we're not going too much into the design of the film. There are a lot of design elements, of course, but the backgrounds of the films are not discussed too much. But now that you tell us that there is that element of the archive, we have to go and think about it and see if that can be used maybe also on different supports like the website, and having Ray Harryhausen discuss this one specific films and why he likes Rose Verne, or other questions like that.
When we've worked recently with academic writers, we've talked about the issues that when Ray's films came out in the 60s and 70s, they were considered to be children's films. And even the studios didn't regard them with any great respect. So they would never be available for the Oscars corridor. So Ray never won an Academy Award in his lifetime. Was never even nominated for films like Jason the Argonauts. Luckily, that's been amended now with his special Academy Award. It seems editorially there's been a big shift that when Ray's films were released, some of the reviews were quite sniffy and a bit dismissive, whereas now those young people who went to the cinema to see Ray's films are now in charge, if you like, of that editorial conversation. And he's been completely reassessed in his own lifetime. I think that's quite unusual for a filmmaker.
Absolutely.
It's very unusual. It's a very good thing that it did happen, that he lived long enough to kind of see that people were really, a lot of people, like, we know the names, but, there are a lot of people out there that are big fans of his, and that paid homage to him and his work. And it's good that he was able to, not just to be a cult figure, but he went a bit more mainstream at the end,
Because people think science fiction, they think Star Wars, don't they? And often if you say to the man in the street, name something science fiction, oh, Star Wars or Star Trek.
Of course.
And when Ray died in 2013, George Lucas was quoted as saying, without Ray Harryhausen, there would likely have been no Star Wars. And I think in a sense that sums up what you're saying about the children that he influenced that later became filmmakers like Peter Jackson and James Cameron, who came to the altar of Ray Harryhausen and very much sought an audience with him when they were having their big films released in London.
Absolutely. I think he was a major influence on many people, and across the genres even. People like me, that got interested in science fiction. This partly because I've seen the films when I was a kid, and not only Ray Harryhausen, but that he was a big influence for sure.
I also know from Barbican's perspective, having done a Pixar exhibition and a Lucasfilm Star Wars exhibition, that both George Lucas and John Lasseter were just hugely indebted and were quite, at every opportunity would express that debt of gratitude to Harryhausen as just an incredible pioneer. So his influence is just cannot be overstated.
That's marvellous, isn't it? Because if you think there was no internet when Ray was making films, his last film in 1981, Clash of the Titans, there was no real opportunity for fans to interact unless they found his address in London and posted him a letter. So there was none of the Twitter or none of the Facebook vibes or, when a new film opens there, almost instantly if it's going to be liked or not liked by fans. So for Ray, it's been quite a slow process. And often when we would speak to him about giving a talk about a film or there's an anniversary coming up, or even recording commentaries for his films, because none had been recorded for most of his films, including Clash of the Titans and Golden Voyage of Sinbad and so on. He felt that what he had to say would perhaps no longer be relevant and that people wouldn't want to hear it. So I think he was always surprised when people wanted to show a film. Oh, they're going to show one of my movies again. Why would they show my film? Thinking that perhaps he'd been forgotten, because in a sense he left filmmaking at a time when special effects were really taking off. If we think of the work of Industrial Light and Magic and Phil Tippett's, who was, if you like, the natural successor to the work of Ray Harryhausen with Go Motion and Dragon Slayer and The Empire Strikes Back, I think he felt he'd retreated into the shadows and that he'd been forgotten. So I think it's marvellous that the Barbican is recognising his work along with other filmmakers as well.
But I hope also it gives an opportunity for, obviously we can show only a small portion of the archive, but I would hope that the small amount of works that we can show will inspire other curators, other museums to perhaps revisit this material, to talk to you guys about doing something more large scale that would really, I think from the visit that we had to the archive, that there is a major retrospective is warranted. So I would hope that this will be the first of many exhibitions that will, that will come out of that wonderful facility.
Yes, well, I do hope so. And, it's an opportunity in the way that Star Wars has been an opportunity to get young people to revisit Harryhausen. With this exhibition, we can get our fans to revisit the greater sort of literary context for science fiction, because, of course, Ray Harryhausen didn't invent science fiction. I think Forrest J. Ackerman, Ray's friend, would have said that he coined the phrase sci-fi. But of course, science fiction literature has been going on for centuries. So I suspect that if we can bring our fan base here to the Barbican, then they'll certainly learn something new as well.
Yeah, because there are still quite a lot of people, maybe of the younger generations, they don't know Ray Harryhausen. So it's a good thing to actually bring him back under the limelight again, also through that exhibition.
That's great. Well, thanks very much for talking to me today, and we look forward to the exhibition. When's it coming on again?
We open here on the 1st of June, running through to the 1st of September next year, 2017.
Excellent. Brilliant. And we'll be back, hopefully, to do another special podcast on the ground, as it were, in the exhibition space.
Wonderful.
Thanks very much. Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
Thank you.
Soon others will be coming from Earth. Our galleries will be strewn with dead.
I'm the only one who holds the secret of Caverite.
Then you and your secret will remain here on the moon.
So, Connor, what did you make of that then, after hearing our exclusive chat there with the Barbican and their very special plans for 2017?
I found the interview incredibly interesting. I found Neil and Patrick's ideas quite thought-provoking and definitely rich in value. When I must admit, when they initially spoke to me about the kind of things that they were interested in viewing from the collection, I thought there'd maybe been a miscommunication, because I didn't really understand how a film like The Valley of Gwangi fits in with the theme of science fiction. And as you just heard, Neil and Patrick have this vision of lost worlds, early science fiction, and how the first science fiction films tied in with the works of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. Now, Ray's work throughout his career touched on this kind of classical literature, and he, you could say, really shaped the way that a lot of people think of these classic novels and fantasy tales to this day. I suppose another aspect of Ray's work which is very interesting is that of lost worlds, through which he's very indebted to his mentor and predecessor, Willis O'Brien. And of course, Ray was really heavily influenced by King Kong, but a lot of O'Brien's work was stories about lost worlds. So there was the film The Lost World about dinosaurs, there was King Kong, and then there was lots of other projects, which some of which never got off the ground, including The Valley of Gwangi, which Ray later went on to make, which are about discoveries, about things that are technically scientifically possible. They're not completely outrageous, they're not set in the future. There are things that could have happened, discovering lost civilizations and creatures which have been lost to the mists of time. So, encapsulating Ray as an architect of this genre of early science fiction, lost worlds, and stories which were scientifically possible and at one point were science fact, I think is a very interesting perspective on his work.
No, definitely. So when people go to see the exhibition, of course, it's all very well designed and curated, and it's there for people to just walk into. And I think sometimes people think, there's big store houses and warehouses full of Ray stuff that's all boxed and ready to go, and you just kind of wheel it up in front of the public. But in terms of being a collections manager, what does it mean when the Barbican come along and they're looking for artwork and stills and some of the models? It's you can't just open a cabinet and point to the items you want and say, there you go, can you? I mean, how does it actually work?
Unfortunately not, no. One day maybe, but as it is, we have a very good idea of what we have within the collection. There's around 16,000 items documented, but that is a fraction of the estimated 50,000 items within the collection. For the first time, all of Ray's collection is under one roof, so it's all here, but there's the quantity, as you heard Neil and Patrick speak about there, the quantity of the collection can be slightly overwhelming, and so it took, for their visit, which was only a few short hours, and which is only accessing a percentage of the collection. There was select models and select artwork that they were interested in. It takes a lot of work to lay that out for them to browse through in a manner that's not going to completely overwhelm them or confuse them. And they, as they admitted, they could have been there all day. Had they the time, they could have spent a week within our archive browsing through Ray's fantastic collection. As it is, there's hidden treasures in every corner of the archive which are yet to be properly catalogued and discovered. But what the guys were interested in primarily were the original models, a lot of which have survived incredibly well. Models from Mysterious Island, 1 million years BC, First Men in the Moon, and Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, amongst others. But also Ray's artwork and storyboards, which are completely fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of our fans and people who follow us on Twitter and Facebook have seen this artwork on their computer screens or on their phone screens. But seeing this stuff in person is quite mind-blowing when you see not only the scale but the quantity of work involved. In a film like Mysterious Island, there are incredible pieces of artwork for every single scene in the film, plus deleted scenes and and early concepts and so forth. So having this prepared in an organised manner for them did take a lot of work, but they were so impressed by Ray's material. It's a wonderful collection, and I think it's going to be an interesting opportunity to showcase an aspect of Ray's work that people sometimes might not consider. And despite the fact that it's just a small fraction of his entire collection, it's really going to be quite wonderful to see it within the context of an exhibition which celebrates the history of science fiction over many, many decades.
Well, that's great, Connor. We hope that the fans of Ray Harryhausen and science fiction will come along and see these items, as it were, in the flesh for some of the monsters and all their rubber glory. And of course, the artworks have to be sort of seen to be believed. So people who go to galleries will appreciate what I'm saying there. And there's an opportunity to see also some of the films that weren't made. So some of the artwork, and perhaps the test footage from Ray Harryhausen's War of the Worlds, which would have had fabulous Martians on tripods, as discussed in that piece. But well, you've certainly got your work cut out, Connor. I'm looking forward to seeing what you and the guys at the Barbican put together. And we're going to be hearing a bit more about some of the things you're up to at the end of this month, because you've got a Lost Treasures presentation to give, haven't you? Tell me about that.
That's it. John and I will be attending the Starburst Festival on the 26th of August, which is at the end of this month. And we really have something for everything. This is Starburst Festival's family day, so there's going to be a lot of families, young children there, as well as people who are long-term fans of Ray Harryhausen. So we've put together a little presentation that's going to be intriguing for all involved. So we're going to be showing John's fantastic documentary Movement into Life, and that's not available anywhere else. That you can only see that if you come and see John speak, and John's going to talk a little about his experiences with Ray and about Ray's career. And we're then going to move on to exploring some of Ray's lost treasures. Now, I counted today, at the end of An Animated Life, Ray's book from 2009, he details 53 projects which he would have liked to have worked on, but which just didn't come about for one reason or another. Now, we can't talk about every single one, but these projects range from a single sketch or a single drawing that Ray had envisioned and just never got around to making, to projects which had been storyboarded, had models created for them, had test footage created for them, and sometimes even location shooting had taken place. And so for the Lost Treasures presentation, we're going to be looking at key stories and key movie projects which Ray just couldn't make for one reason or another throughout his career, from the very early days back in the 1930s all the way through to movie projects in the mid-1980s after he'd retired, that maybe would have seen him making one or two more films after Clash of the Titans. And there's going to be some incredible imagery, storyboards and test footage from throughout these Lost Treasures. And it just goes to show, I mean, throughout Ray's life he was creating constantly, and some of the ideas that eventually did end up making it in the films were from artwork that he'd created a decade or 2 decades earlier. And it's just this incredibly rich well of inspiration and creativity that Ray was able to dip into. And it's incredible to think that the 15 Ray Harryhausen films that we do have and can watch at our leisure are just a fraction of this potential of films that could have been made and for various circumstances weren't. You mentioned War of the Worlds there. I think that's the one which Ray was most keen on having developed. It just didn't come about, and he was very disappointed about that. But we have so much rich material related to that film. Key drawings, storyboards, and some test footage, as well as a couple of models relating to the project. And for that reason, we can stretch our imaginations. We can imagine, I think, quite clearly what Ray's vision for H.G. Wells' A War of the Worlds would have looked like.
Absolutely. And just so people know, we mentioned last month in the Clash of the Titans podcast special about Starburst magazine. So those fans of Starburst magazine will know that Starburst was a big supporter of Ray's films throughout the 70s and 80s, their golden years at the magazine. But of course, it's still thriving today. You can find out more at starburstfilmfest.co.uk, and you can follow them on Twitter at starburstff. So come along, say hi to us. We're going to be doing some special podcasts at the film festival, so we hope to speak to perhaps some of the fans, do come up and say hello to us. Please be nice, don't heckle me too much, and Connor, when we're giving our presentation. But do come up, ask us questions. You might be part of a future podcast. And I think Caroline Monroe is going to be there as well. Very exciting. She's been a trustee here, of course, at the Ray Harryhausen Foundation. There's going to be a screening of Golden Voyage of Sinbad. So it's going to be a great day on that bank holiday weekend in Manchester. And this is the inaugural film festival for Starburst. So we're particularly thrilled. And I know Ray would be, because he kept all of the editions of Starburst magazine that featured his films. So it's going to be a great time, Connor.
Yes, it's going to be a wonderful weekend. And alongside our appearance, there's going to be a lot of other fantastic guests and activities, so it really is a must-see event. And if you're able to get to Manchester on that bank holiday, you won't regret it. There's a lot of fantastic activities for all the family.
And I'm going to geek out wearing real fanboy style t-shirts, and me and Connor are going to have like a geek out walk-off or something like that, privately in our own minds, of course. But let us know anything you think, what you think of us, what you think of the foundation is doing, and do come up and say hello. We want it to be a fun sort of family day, as Connor says. So I'm looking forward to it, Connor. It's going to be great fun.
It certainly is. I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. Okay, well, we'll see you there. Take care then. Thanks, guys.
Copyright in the Ray Harryhausen podcast is owned by the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation, a registered Scottish charity. Number SC001419, 2016. This recording may not be reproduced in whole or in part without written permission from the Foundation. The views expressed within these podcasts do not necessarily reflect those of the Foundation, its trustees or employees. For further terms and conditions, please contact us at rayharryhausen.com, where you can also find our Facebooks and Twitter links.